Thank you very much, Thomas. Yes, my name is Martin Forsberg, and I will do this presentation about basic XML, where I will introduce the key concepts. This is particularly for those of you who are new to XML or want to hear some of the key aspects. We will also take a look at things related to transformation between formats and conversion and problems that can occur related to that. If you have questions, either you can, as Thomas said, either you can put them in the chat window. If someone helps, Thomas or Ines could help me to look at that and perhaps remind me if something comes up. Or you can just ask the question directly in your microphone. That works well too. We will also have time in the end for questions that might have come up, which you don't have answers to yet. All right, so let's talk about the structured electronic formats. So the reason why we're here basically is in relation to the European standard on e-invoicing and the fact that we are using structured formats for that. It's all about interoperability, to get two systems or two businesses to understand each other in an expected way. And for that to happen, we need to know what type of information is being exchanged, how should I interpret it, and how should I process it. And there are different ways of course, doing this. We can have unstructured information or structured information. And when we say structured, I mean that it's identifiable parts that can be used for automation. When it's unstructured, it's not possible to automate in a rational way. And particularly when we're talking about XML, we have the data itself, but also information about the data in the markup. So those two concepts are important. And taking a step back and looking at the directive and what it says on European on e-invoicing, one thing in the whereas clauses, it says that a mere image file should not be considered to be an electronic invoice for the purpose of this directive. That's an important thing. Just the image or a representation is not considered to be an e-invoice. And in the definition of electronic invoice means that it has been issued, transmitted, received in a structured electronic format, which allows for automatic and electronic processing. That's just a backdrop on the importance of this topic here. So there are many formats, many of them structured, sometimes in proprietary ways, and sometimes in standardized ways. We all know data formats such as Excel or CSV, comma-separated files. In-house formats that's defined often by a specific ERP system, for example, typically a structured format. And then we have more standardized formats where the content is qualified somehow or marked up. And here we come into formats like EDIFACT or XML. And that means that the receiver can, by looking at the information itself, draw conclusions on what does the content mean. So XML is a markup language. So the information is marked up. It's more or less human readable. In the beginning of XML, when in late 90s, that was brought up as the most important aspect and perhaps a driving force. It should be human readable. In practice, people don't want to read XML. It's not meant for that. Perhaps in the prime reason is for machine to machine, particularly in our context. The semantic is separated from the data. So we have the markup, which gives us a clue on what information is being sent, but it often needs to be looked up or understood based on an external semantic specification. A big benefit with XML is that we can use generic software that can read and process XML. So that also has led to quite cheap commodity products compared to, for example, Edifact, where you have quite few tools available. With XML, it's integrated in pretty much all software development tools, and there are both free and commercial tools available. And also one aspect with XML that differs it from other structured standardized format is that there is a broad understanding and knowledge of how it works, at least on the generic level. Of course, the knowledge of the actual standards, such as the UBL invoice across industry invoice, that is perhaps more scarce, but the basic understanding is broad. So, as for making a reference here, I've mentioned Edifact a few times, and for those of you who have know about this, it's a more compact format. You see an example in the bottom here. It says NAD, name and address, supplier, and then there's an ID. The same information is expressed above in the form of XML. As you can see, the XML is more verbose. It takes more space. It's even said that sometimes a 100 kilobyte Edifact file can take 1 megabyte of XML. So in that sense, that could be a drawback. Sometimes that is brought up, particularly 20 years ago when bandwidth was a bigger problem. Today is not such a big issue. I would say that an electronic invoice file with, let's say, 1,000 or 5,000 invoice lines, which is a ridiculously big invoice, is still smaller than a normal image you take with your iPhone. So that's less of a problem. Also, XML is very compression friendly. So if you compress an XML file and an Edifact file, you get more or less the same size zipped file. And transport protocols such as AS4, which is promoted and used in the e-delivery infrastructure, both within PEPL is coming with AS4 and from CEF. Compression is an option when sending messages. So the size is less of a problem nowadays. Also, XML is generic. It's not only for electronic data interchange in electronic business. XML is used everywhere.